Hello and welcome back to Oversky Deck Doctor. This week we're going to take a look at Luuu90's Blood Rain deck. This is a burn deck that utilizes event cards as its win condition, and as you can see there's not a lot of creatures in this build. In fact, there's only 6 in total. 3 Divine Guardians and 3 Blood Singers. Now, at the beginning of the Oversky, there was a deck that was quite similar to this that used yellow as well for hard removal. But Luuu has gone down the path of pure mono red, which is pretty cool. I really enjoyed this list, and you basically have tons and tons of removal, and then you try and sneak in some damage with Blood Singer, Cypher's Wrath, Derelict Tower, and then finish off your opponent with Hellfire. So let's take a look at the cards and see what they do. Our first selection of cards are the creature cards. These are the only creatures in the deck, and you're going to be relying on these to gather Faeria. Divine Guardian is a fantastic creature for this style of deck, simply because it can't be targeted by your opponent's events. So this makes it very durable. It doesn't get hit by Cypher's Wrath, Soul Drain, Choking Sands, you name it. This creature has to die in combat, and it has the added ability of when you take lethal damage, Divine Guardian will die instead. Now keep in mind, if you have multiple Divine Guardians down on the board and then you take lethal damage, all the Divine Guardians will die, so just keep that in mind while you're playing. But this is a fantastic Faeria Harvester, simply because it's cheap, it protects you, it can't be removed, and it requires no special land, so it can be played as a turn 1 Faeria collector. Now Blood Singer is kind of the burn damage. A creature that can collect Faeria is quite bulky as well with 4 life, so it's going to stick around. Whenever your opponent's creature dies, deal 1 damage to your opponent. So this is really good because you can use your Firestorms and your Cypher's Wraths and all this removal that is packed in this list to deal additional damage to your opponent and further accelerate your win condition. So Bloodsinger, great collector, great bit of chip damage along with it, but keep in mind, like I said, these are the only 2 creatures in the build, so they're going to become very valuable when you're trying to harvest Faeria. The rest of the cards are going to be events and structures that either deal damage to your opponent or your opponent's creatures. Cypher's Wrath, deal 2 damage to an enemy, then deal 2 damage to your opponent if it dies, and if you combo that with Blood Singer, that's 3 damage in total, so that's as much as a Flame Burst. So Cypher's Wrath is great when used with Blood Singer, but even if you don't have the Blood Singer, you're going to be using this just to control the board. Now Firebomb is a card I'm a big fan of, and I'm glad to see it in this build. It's an event that can deal 4 damage from any range, so it's not restricted like Bomb Slinger, which needs to be adjacent to the target. And there's so many good creatures you can hit for 4 damage at the moment. Windstorm, Charger, Brigands, Axe Grinders, to name a few. So there's a lot of great creatures that you can hit with Firebomb right now, and it's going to be one of your go-to removal cards. Punishment is an interesting addition to the list. This is Luuu90's list, and I can see why it's been added. Azura Skywhale starting to make a reappearance. You can deal 5 damage to that for free Faeria, then maybe ping it off with a Derelict Tower. You can take out Mace Men for free Faeria. That's just a clean kill on that card. So there are a few creatures in the neutral slot that can be answered by punishment, and failing that, it's free Faeria for 2 damage. You don't get, say, the effect of Cypher's Wrath, but that might be quite valuable when you're trying to clean up the board. Our next set of cards is, surprise surprise, more removal, but this removal can hit your opponent's orb directly. Derelict Tower is a structure that deals 1 damage when you activate it and deals 1 damage to itself. So for free Faeria, you can deal 3 damage as much as a Flame Burst. What's quite nice about Derelict Tower is you can distribute the damage between your opponent's orb and enemy creatures. So this gives you an opportunity to start chipping away at something quite big and then finishing it off with another piece of removal. But in most cases, you'll probably just use this to either control the board, or you're going to be dealing direct damage to your opponent to accelerate your win condition. Now Flame Burst, again, another piece of removal. You can throw this at creatures if you need to, but it does have a lot of value going to your opponent's orb, because this will allow you to defeat your opponent much quicker. Now Hellfire is the big daddy event of this list. Deal 9 damage, randomly split among enemies. Now you're going to find that with all the removal you have in this build, you're going to be going up against a lot of empty boards, and they are the perfect opportunities to Hellfire. Once you've removed your opponent's threats and they don't have any more creatures to play, or they just pass the turn, try and get that Hellfire off then, because you'll deal 9 damage directly to your opponent, and that will put them on a clock. They're going to be very worried if they take that much damage to their orb. So Hellfire can be used as removal as well. You can combo it with other things like the Derelict Tower, like the Cypher's Wrath, but in most cases you want to use this card when your opponent has an empty board. For our last set of cards, we have a few different options and tools that you can use during your matches. Devouring Plant is an anti-aggro card, but it can also delay creatures from clearing your Bloodsingers and your Divine Guardians and giving them time to run away. So Devouring Plant is great in aggro, especially against Yellow Rush, but I also like to use this card to just block my opponent, keep them locked into position for a turn, and then get those creatures out of dodge because they're your only Faeria collectors. Bloodsong is interesting because Bloodsong is quite random at times. You kind of need to time your Bloodsong so you get the most value, but sometimes it's just not going to go the way you want it. But if it does go the way you want it, you can get some amazing cost reductions done to your hand. I had an incident where I had my Firestorm reduced to 0, and I had Flame Burst reduced as well, and I was able to like Firestorm, Hellfire in one turn and wipe an entire board. So Bloodsong, although it's a bit random, it can give you a lot of reach and it can give you a lot of range that you wouldn't be able to do with your basically a current Faeria account at the time. So let's say you don't have enough Faeria to double Firestorm. Maybe Bloodsong will be an answer for you. You can reduce those 2 Firestorms and then be able to double Firestorm. So Bloodsong, being able to reduce the cost of events in hand, allows you to combo more. Speaking of Firestorm, it is our last card of the selection. Very simple, 6 Faeria, 3 mountains, deal 3 damage to all enemies. Now, I generally don't build the 3rd mountain until I've built lands in between a wells. I'll talk about this more in land placement, but what I like to do is I like to build from outside my orbs, and then I like to build in between the wells, and that's where I develop my 3rd mountain. However, if you do need the Firestorm, don't be afraid to build that last mountain to play the card. If you have the luxury of going into double collection, do it then, but if you do need it, by all means build that mountain and drop that area of effect damage. And again, you can combo this off with other removals in the deck, so a lot of synergy there for dealing mass amounts of damage to the board. And Firestorm, you know, most times is going to help you clean up the board. For your mulligan, you're going to want a hard mulligan for a creature. You desperately need a creature to start collecting Faeria. So if you don't have a creature in hand, throw it all away and try and get either a Divine Guardian or a Bloodsinger. Now, if you do pick up one of these creatures, one card I like to keep is Firebomb. It has a lot of reach, does a lot of damage, and can deal with pretty much most early plays from other decks. So being able to answer their first Harvester is always very nice, but like I said, you really want a creature, so prioritize mulliganing for these 2 creatures. One of each is fine. If you can get 2 creatures, that's fantastic, but creatures are your priority, as there's not many in this build. Now that we've taken a look at the deck, how much does it cost? 10 commons, 11 rares, 9 epics, coming up 990 Memoria, so quite a cheap deck. It doesn't use any legendary cards, but keep in mind that this build does not use any Oversky cards, so you're going to have to use your Memoria if you want to craft the cards. Now, some of the cards you probably won't have because they don't see much play are the Divine Guardians. Now, Divine Guardians generally are used in these style of builds, so if you like this kind of event damage based kind of concept, crafting Divine Guardians for future variations of this archetype could be really good. But like I said, quite a cheap deck really. 990 Memoria, no legendaries, 9 epics, and most of them you're going to probably have because if you play red, Firestorm is pretty crucial. Hellfire is always a fun card to run in various builds. But yeah, pretty cheap deck, and like I said, no Oversky cards. So let's take a look at the strengths and weaknesses. Lots of removal options. You have tons of removal. I don't think there's any deck in the game right now that has as much removal as this build. The red-yellow version from a couple of months ago had like Last Nightmare and Choking Sands and Wind Soldiers, but I actually prefer this version. It's a little tighter, you keep it in one color, and you basically utilize all the best removal from red. Now, how to kill with Divine Guardians? Divine Guardians are really annoying because you have to destroy the Divine Guardian or break the Divine Guardian by dealing lethal damage in order to finish off your opponent. So if Divine Guardian is running across the other side of the map, it can be really frustrating, and you have to push damage, and then if you don't finish them off, they could just drop another Divine Guardian, or they could kill you. So Divine Guardian gives you a lot of durability, and it allows you to use your life as a resource when trying to deal direct damage to your opponent instead of answering their creatures. If you know Divine Guardian is going to keep you alive, you can maybe throw this Flame Burst at your opponent's orb rather than controlling their board. Cost reduction with Bloodsong can lead to powerful event combos. Now, I touched on this during the card section of the video. If you get a good Bloodsong off, you can do some mad stuff. Absolutely crazy event combos that can wipe boards and deal loads of damage. So Bloodsong is kind of the wild card of the deck. It can be fantastic, but because of its kind of variance nature, it can be pretty bad at some times as well. Weak to high life creatures. So high life creatures are going to be an absolute nightmare. If you go against mono green and they manage to land ramp loads of forest towards you and drop Faeria golems, you're never killing those cards, and you probably shouldn't even bother investing in them. At that point, Hellfire becomes really bad because it's going to hit Faeria golems. So green can be a big issue for this build. Can get overrun by fast tempo orientated decks. So yellow tempo is a matchup you can win, don't get me wrong. You do have lots of removal options, but if they get like an early Windstorm Colossus down, it can be really difficult to deal with a 7/7. You have to invest a lot into it. So yeah, there's a few things that can go wrong when going against a deck like yellow tempo, like really quick decks. But if your removal lines up, you should be alright. For land placement, you want to build from outside your orb and collect off your own wells. Don't be afraid to split two harvesters between the two wells. And that's pretty much it. You let your opponent come to you, you can draw cards or kind of build land to stop them from getting, say, axe grinder spots and stuff like that. But in most cases, you're going to be waiting for your opponent to come to you and then removing their threats as they come. Now, at some point, you might find that your opponent's developed down one side and they've completely ignored another side, and that's the perfect opportunity to start building lands into a well, and you can collect in between wells and collect off both your own wells while you're defending, and this gives you an abundance of Faeria, allowing you to draw more cards and get more damage into your hand. So start things off building outside from the side of your orb, collect off your own wells, and when you're feeling a bit comfortable or your opponent has gone down one side and has ignored another, build to the opposite side in between the wells and collect a lot of Faeria. That wraps up this episode of Oversky Deck Doctor. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you haven't already tried a deck like this, I feel this is a very unique archetype and a unique way to play Faeria. I'd strongly recommend it, especially if you like kind of control burn style decks. Like I said, you don't have a lot of creatures, you're going to be using a lot of event removal to answer your opponent's threats. You can deal massive amounts of damage with that Hellfire. But yeah, thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, drop a subscribe to keep up to date on when our content goes live. And be sure to check out Deck Pilot if you're unsure on how to play this. I'll be playing this deck for a few matches, and I'll give you guys an idea on how it's played. Thanks again, guys, and enjoy Blood Rain.